Okay, so we gotta talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. This game is the talk of the town right now, both in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community and also even some of Konami's shareholders, you guys might remember, and I wanted to share my opinions on it as well as get you guys' opinions on it. Let's just start with sort of my background around this game, kind of how I play it and how I approach it. I am a bit of a Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel fiend. I would almost say an addict. I really like this game. I play it basically every day. I'm always grinding through the ladder. I'm usually in diamond rank, playing against, right now it's like tier and branded and labyrinth decks all day long. Currently, I've been enjoying the Dogmatica ritual deck a lot, but I also have different things like Exo Sisters, Generators, Medolce. I play a bit of a mix. I enjoy kind of, trying to bash my head in against the current metagame and see how well I can do. And I also just like Master Duel as a game presentationally. I like the music, I like the sound effects, I like the visuals for when, boss monsters appear on screen. On the whole, Konami did a great thing with Master Duel. It is fun, it's convenient, I can just hop in, play a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And enjoy it, and that's great. That's not to say that I don't have complaints about the game too, but I wanted to just get that out of the way early on so people know. And there are even some complaints that people have about this game that I disagree with and think are perfectly fine. Let's start with some of the elephants in the room, right? The first is that whole best of three and side decking thing that a lot of people want in Master Duel. Coming from the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, of course, where we have, best 2 out of 3 matches and the ability to side deck to kind of help circumvent difficult matchups or situations. I think that these would be really nice things to add into Master Duel, even if they weren't necessarily part of the core experience. I still would like the ability to play like maybe best 2 out of 3 in duel rooms or something like that. But I feel that for Master Duel, they don't really fit in with what I imagine was probably the vision for this game as like a digital game. I think they want people to be able to log in, get in a few quick Yu-Gi-Oh! Matches, and log out. If you play best 2 out of 3 with side decking, the average length of a match increases from what might be maybe 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes, to potentially 40 plus minutes, as we know happens in the TCG itself. For a really competitive type, that sounds perfectly fine, and that's kind of what they go into Yu-Gi-Oh! Expecting to begin with. But for more casual people who are maybe just able to fit in a couple of Master Duel games, after work or during a small break or something, that sort of time commitment looks a lot more like, a Dota, League of Legends, like, half-hour plus game that you're queuing into. They probably made the right call in just keeping things best of one. It's just supposed to be like a single duel, you get in, you get out. Still though, I would like these features to come maybe just as an option, again, like you have somewhere else, like in a duel room, so that way when people are doing like, community run tournaments, they would at least have the way of doing it without having to like kind of brute force it themselves. Now, the next thing is around some of the quality of life features. For instance, one of the things I really like is when an effect is activated, it actually shows up in the top right corner of the screen, the text of like, the monster effect that they decided to use. As we know, Yu-Gi-Oh's got a lot of stuff to keep up with and effects are really long, so this is a really good convenience feature. They also have added that feature where there's like a green check mark beside effects that have been used. I find this is really useful when you're facing a deck like TR Elements, for instance. But one thing they added recently that people don't seem to like so much is around Infinite Impermanence. As you guys know, when you activate Infinite Impermanence, all the spell and trap cards in the same column that it was set in are negated for the rest of the turn. So this means that you need to remember the Imperm column, so to speak. For a lot of competitive players, this is kind of just a day in the office, right? If you forget the Imperm column, that's your fault because it's your responsibility to remember it. In Master Duel, though, they made it where that column is now glowing, and so you'll always know what column Imperm was activated in. I think this is a good change because it again helps with the casual kind of accessibility experience, right? This means that when average Joe, who's just getting in a couple of quick casual games of Yu-Gi-Oh! After work, decides he wants to play, and then he accidentally activates something in the Imperm column, it gets negated, and now he's kind of confused and angry and just decides to quit, that's like a lost Yu-Gi-Oh! Player. I think that it's better to just let people know, okay, hey, here's a threat, just remember it and keep it in mind, than it is to be like, oh, you missed it, you should have remembered it among the 50 other things that go on in this game. Anything that makes the game a little bit easier, it's not the end of the world, Imperm still functions as a card. Okay, so the next issue is a really big one, and that's transitioning from Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel to the TCG. So I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel actually exists for Konami as a way to both monetize a sort of digital form of Yu-Gi-Oh!, but also to ideally convert players into the TCG. But what seems to happen is that Master Duel players enjoy the game, but when they try to play the physical card game and get the cards, they run into a lot of issues. So I see 3 main causes for this. The first is the different card pool. This is something that everybody's talked about since day one. Master Duel has most of the cards in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, but not all of them. And that means that the way that your deck is built on Master Duel might not be how you build it on the TCG, and vice versa. So because these games don't really have parity, you can't just jump between one and the other. And of course, that differing ban list means that maybe in Master Duel you're used to running 2 copies of Called by the Grave, but you're not able to run, 2 copies in the TTG right now. I think the second issue is related to the price. So in Master Duel, cards have, UR, SR, common, rare, those different rarities, but all URs are basically created equal, and there's no real price tag to them. You can just grind Master Duel without paying a penny and build really powerful, viable, competitive decks. But once you decide to hop into the paper game, you might find that the deck that you were playing in Master Duel is a lot more expensive because the physical cards have, very real price tag. Maybe that's something where it's more on the TCG side to reprint staples and stuff like that so that people don't have to pay arm and leg for like Pot of Prosperity or Forbidden Droplets or Triple Tactics Thrust or something like that. I don't think that's really Master Duel's fault. The third thing is probably around game complexity, technicalities, and like game state stuff. So while I do like Master Duel's convenience features, I could see where a player who's played a lot of Master Duel and really likes that could still go to the local card shop and be overwhelmed. Because now you have to physically hold these cards and physically play these cards, and so it's not as easy to just click on your opponent's grave and shuffle through what's happened, or see the duel log on the side of the screen, or see all of the attack changes that monsters have had. Master Duel keeps up with all of that for you, and that's really convenient. It's got those green check marks we were talking about. It shows what effects are being activated. It glows the imperm column. All of that stuff is not available for you, of course, in the TCG, which means that, yeah, you will be a little bit overwhelmed. So in addition to it being expensive, in addition to the format being different, the game itself, even though the rules are more or less the same, just feels more complex. I don't really know if there's a solution there because, like I said before, Master Duel is a digital simulator, so it's not going to ever really be able to perfectly capture the nuances of playing the game physically. And in Master Duel, the engine itself will not allow you to make certain types of misplays that are like illegal or, misrepresent the game state. But that can happen easily in the TCG. As far as that's concerned, see my last video. Konami's just got to make better onboarding products. I think that they've got to maybe find ways to make the game encourage more camaraderie and teaching. There's also some dissatisfaction around Master Duel and its game modes, because in ranked mode, what often happens is the golden games pretty much exist in the gold tier. Once you get to platinum and especially diamond and definitely master rank, you're going to be facing a lot of meta decks, and nobody wants to play a lot of meta decks. It's really annoying when that's kind of what you're just queuing up against over and over and over and over. Some competitive players, that's what they expect and that's what they enjoy, but like generally speaking, I think for casual people, it almost feels like a curse to get past gold rank because that's where the fun games with the creative, interesting decks end. So Konami added a casual mode to Master Duel, but I feel like it's a bit unfulfilling. You don't want to add too many incentives or rewards for playing casual mode because then all the meta players will just come in and bring TR elements to casual and ruin it for everybody else. But I do think it'd be nice if maybe you could get your daily missions done through casual mode. Right now, it actually feels like there's not any reason to play it because there are absolutely zero rewards for playing. Then there's Master Duel's events. My thing with festivals is I feel like they should be playable even after they end. So even if you can't necessarily get all the rewards for playing them, I think that you should be able to queue into, say, the Fusion Festival at any time that you want. So even if it's not live, you can still play it and just play that format because it's effectively giving alternative formats, which is always something that people really want in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because playing against the meta, as we know, gets boring. There's also some sort of pipe dream modes people want, like a draft mode or maybe even like a tag duel mode. I would love to see this sort of stuff, but I can definitely see where it's probably not super high on the development totem pole for them. Okay, so I just started working the video and I realized I didn't actually talk about Maxi, so let's talk about the Roach real quick. This is a very controversial card. I know a lot of people, like it or dislike it or want it banned or whatever. Some people say that it is, an auto-win card against combo decks. When they use Maxi, there's nothing I can do. I can either stop and then lose the next turn, or I keep playing and they draw a million cards and they beat me anyway. It's hopeless, right? So I have the unpopular opinion that I think Maxi is actually fine in Master Duel. Now, let me explain before you get your pitchforks out and run to the comments. I'm not saying that Maxi is a perfectly designed Yu-Gi-Oh card. I'm not saying that it fixes all the problems in this game. And I'm certainly not Team Maxi, as I've heard it be called online. I just do have reasons why I think that it kind of works in this game. The first thing is Master Duel is a best of one format. This means when you lose the coin flip and have to go second, it can feel kind of hopeless. Maxi gives players a fighting chance in that regard. If your opponent's going to combo off, you can use Maxi to perhaps stave that off or at least get the resources you need to fight back next turn. Now, I'm well aware that this can still be extremely polarizing, right? It means that if you're playing a combo deck and they drop Maxi, you're at a bit of an impasse. But that to me is where the counterplay comes in. And there are two kinds of counterplay to Maxi. The first thing is there are lots of actual cards you can run as outs to it. There's Ash Blossom, there's Called by the Grave, there's Crossout Designator, and if you want to get really extreme with it, there's Psyframe Gamma or Droll and Lockbird that can also deal with Maxi. Now, I know what people are going to say, that, well, this dilutes my deck, Paul. I don't want to run all of these cards because that means that's less room for my strategy. Yeah, I guess that's true, but here's the thing. If you know that Maxi is effective against your deck and usually shuts you down and can result in you losing games, then maybe that means it's a good sign to run the cards that beat it. It sucks, but the alternative is losing, so a duelist, in my opinion, should be adapting to it, right? And then you'll maybe say, well, that just means it's a draw the out thing. Right, but like I said, the amount of outs to Maxi outnumber Maxi, and then my second thing to that would be, well, sometimes you just don't draw the cards you need. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a game of chance. At the end of the day, sometimes you'll have strong cards and your opponent won't have answers to them. Sometimes your opponent will draw the card they need to beat you and you won't have the answer to it. It's okay, right? If you did your best to adapt to Maxi and prepare for it and you still lost, well, just chalk it up to bad luck. Sometimes it happens, right? Plus, you also have the ability to just play around Maxi, right? You can choose to stop, you can choose to go, you can also choose to just make one or two more special summons. For me, for instance, I play the Dogmatica Ritual deck. Maxi can be a real thorn in my side, but sometimes when they use it, I'll just stop at one Ritual summon, set Dogmatica Punishment, have Fleur-de-Lis in my hand, and that's usually enough interruptions to get me through the next turn. And my opponent may only drew like one card in the process. And I think that sometimes it's important to remember that that's just a decision you're going to have to make. It's on a case-by-case basis. Can your deck stop playing and still have enough interactions? If it can't, maybe you should work on adding some more of those sorts of things into your deck. Can you run imperms that you can just set? Can your deck use something like Dragon Maid Tidying, right? If you're playing a dragon deck, that can be a way to deal with it. Or Sword Soul Blackout for Sword Souls. Or Sprite Smashers, right? I think it's important not to get so emotional and let the activation of Maxi completely dictate the win or loss right there. If there's a way to play around it, you should try. And my last little bit on this is, I know that Maxi is annoying for really competitive types, but honestly, for most casual people, when you hear the complaints that they have about modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's usually around the really obnoxiously long combos and multi-negate boards. I'm not saying they're right or they're wrong, just something to keep in mind. One last quick problem I have with Master Duel 2 is the way the Duelist Cup sort of invitational events work, the two-stage thing. I find that grinding is not very fulfilling, and I wish that they could maybe do something where there's like pools and then a bracket that you get seeded into. I guess it just feels kind of unfulfilling to know that a person spent 72 hours grinding, but they didn't necessarily actually like win over a field of people, they just had more time. Anyway, that's all my thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel right now. I want to know what you guys think. There's a lot of complaints going on. There's a lot of defenses and arguments. Try to keep it respectful in the comments. I know I've got some opinions that might be considered controversial, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. I'll be reading, I'll be responding. Let me know, what do you think? What should Master Duel be doing? How can it change? How can it make the transition to the TCG easier? I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.